Homemade.
Oh, homemade.
怒りを感じないから。まだ見て飲みに行くでしょ。観光客もこっとるし。
About 20 countries, Sudan, Somalia, all those great countries
solely under WTO.
So this is you lying to people.
That does not mean that all of them. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I'm right.
Very few countries trade solely under WTO rules.
Yes.
America does not trade solely under WTO rules.
Absolutely, which is so she's wrong.
It's got a free trade agreement with Mexico and Canada.
Why does everyone put world trade
between the UK
agreements in place? Because world trade is fucking useless. You guys, doesn't care. What 80% of this country's financial services? WTO doesn't even cover that. How's that going to work? You guys are fucking on cloud cuckoo land, man. You have a clue. Well, I have a problem that we voted for asked the numpties what they thought, and they came back and said,
numpty? Numpties? Yeah. Oh my god. It's rude, it's very rude.
So anyone who didn't agree with you was a numpty.
No, okay. Let me say,
No, that's where the Remainers come from. Generally.
You're probably right. You know what? Your point about democracy, that is a good point, and that is the only difficulty I have, because I agree we have to respect it. I have a massive, so asking people a second time, I agree with that.
But do you
That's
agree
not
with
the
Brussels telling us what our tax rate should be eventually, and our foreign policy,
dictating when David Cameron went to Brussels, they should have said, you know what, David, we value you as a member, and you should have listened. I agree with that. It's still not the answer. So there are going to be two losers in this. The UK, massive loser.
I don't believe it.
Yes.
I just disagree.
What do you do with it? What do you do for a living?
I'm not working at it.
Okay, neither am I, so we equal.
Why don't you look up the FCO 30/10/48, the reasons why we should be coming out of the EU?
Well, you tell me why you think.
It explains why Tim took us into the EU, knowing damn well.
I know that.
It was totally illegal what he did, and it was treasonable. And the EU said it would take 30 years before the stupid public would realise that they signed themselves into doing.
So you're calling me stupid? So
no,
even on that.
No, I would say brainwash.
We're both stupid.
What they said.
Brainwash.
And the FCO 30 highlights that. It said it will take 30 years before the public realise it will be too late. Well, I'm glad it's not too late, because we're coming out on March 29th. I think we will.
Did you know why I've got
I think there'll be a no deal as well.
The backlash of 16.4 million people will not be very pleasant, I'll tell you.
The guys in there voted to trigger Article 50, which initiates a 2-year process.
Yep.
At the end of which, all of the treaties of the EU cease to apply to the UK, whether we have an agreement or not. So, Theresa May has been trying to negotiate an acceptable deal, and everybody.
Well, has she really, or is she just playing politics?
Everybody agrees that that deal is unacceptable. Therefore, that is the only logical conclusion.
Can I asking
39 billion. Do you really think that?
Well, that's what she's agreed to pay
Why
the
would we
EU.
rule by unelected commissioners that we have no control over to get rid of them? You've got Mr. Juncker. Hold on, you've got Mr. Juncker on £30,700
Do you
a month.
think the clowns in there are a lot better? What about the
But there's more clowns.
scandals?
There's more
What about
clowns in the EU.
the
There's
duck
even
houses
bigger
of
ones.
about 5 years ago?
There's even
Do
bigger
you think
ones in
these
the
guys
EU.
are any? Do
Well, we
you
can
think
elect new
Jacob
ones,
Rees-Mogg? Oh, please. Do you think he really represents you? He moved his business to Ireland.
No,
now
he
he'll
did not.
say,
He did
No,
not
he
move
did
his
let's talk
business to
about that.
He
Ireland.
opened
Let's
an
talk.
office in Ireland. He's got offices in Sydney. He's got them in the States. He just opened an office. He didn't move his business.
And Dyson,
Dyson in
Dyson does 4% of his business in the UK.
In
sorry,
03
if
he
you,
opened up
hey,
his
look, he's free
factory
to
in-
do what he wants, but if he wants to be the poster boy for Brexit, you're under a little more
All his research and
scrutiny.
development is here. He employs a lot of people. He's got his new university style.
They just bought an airport near to me to test out their
They're going to
electric cars.
develop the next.
Why are you so hell-bent in us remaining in the EU?
I'm not, you know what, when I...
Come on over. We need your expertise.
No, I thought long and hard. I don't think Europe's perfect, far from it. And like I say, if they had said to David Cameron...
Not Europe. EU.
Yeah, okay, sorry. They should have, when David Cameron went there and said, help me, they should have said, let's sit down and let's discuss what the issues are. Because he had a point. And it is not really a democracy, and their accounts need to be signed off, and there is a lot wrong with Europe. That is
Yeah,
not
but hold on a
the
second. What has Europe done to, or the EU, not Europe,
Well, what
what
is
has
the
the EU done to Greece, Italy, Portugal, Spain? Put them all in trouble. And we bowed out. We bowed out the Eurozone, right, to the tune of 22 billion, which has got nothing to do with us. But when we're in trouble, do they bail us out? No.
Well,
No, they don't. But we had to bail them out.
sorry, no, I'm not
No, don't
sure.
bail
We
us
paid
out.
to bail out.
We bailed
Okay,
them, we bailed
so
out
on the
EU.
30th
We're not even
of
part
March,
of Europe.
how's this going to work?
Congratulations. Leave, please.
Thank you.
How's this going to work on the 30th of March?
We
So you got a truck comes in and it says, can we have your paperwork? Oh, sorry, we don't have paperwork. Or then you're going to pass. It's not going to go through the border, is it? It's not going to work.
Are you talking about goods coming into this country?
Well, both. Well, we will say we will facilitate it. So we will wade through everyone. You think the French are going to wade through everything? They're going to say, oh, sorry, you voted for this. We want paperwork. Otherwise, you're not coming in.
Well, the paperwork will
And
have
all
to
the
be-
jobs will have those as well.
Paperwork will have to be done, and it'll be cleared in advance, and they said they were going to do the same checks they do at the moment. What's your solution? Do you think we just ought to just say Brexit was a bad idea, we shouldn't leave?
Well, I think we need an honest debate. I don't think there was any honesty on both sides. There was no honesty about
We've been
it.
debating for 4 or 5 years.
I don't know why.
It's been 2.5 years since the vote.
That's not the solution. WTO is not the
Were you
solution.
here in 1992? We went there, I can remember because we came here, 88, we came over here, we joined in October 90.
How much has the currency gone down?
No, it doesn't matter.
How much? We were the top performing European economy. We are now struggling along. We are struggling
Because of the
we have
uncertainty.
taken. Where's my other foot?
There's no doubt with the uncertainty.
If we are struggling, that could be the reason that we're still in the EU.
Sorry.
We haven't left the EU, so if we're struggling,
Well,
it's under the EU.
because everyone knows they're discounting what's happening.
Everyone's on hold. People are holding their investment because they're waiting to see what happens. That's not the fault of Brexit per se. It's because of Theresa May and her dithering.
Well, she's.
You
Yeah,
know.
but okay, but what's her solution?
Well,
What does
her
she do?
solution is keep
She
us
wants to
in.
stay in, mate.
She
It's
wants
a
to keep
Remainer.
us in.
Well,
And
leave
even her
means leave
withdrawal,
to me.
Her withdrawal agreement is a circular route out and back in the door.
What is the solution?
Leave. Just say
On
29th of
WTO?
March, we go to hopefully EU and UK on 20-something of March. Say, okay, look, this is going to happen. They both declare to the WTO, and we are now
why would Europe
negotiating.
give us a deal? Why would they?
Because
I
they
wouldn't.
sell us
They
more
have
than we sell them.
70, 80
You know what?
billion surplus with
You know
us.
what? The
Yeah,
day
like
after
80
the
billion.
vote, when June 2016, when Mr. BMW, I call him, I don't know what his name is, said we are more married to the European project and we are sending
That's the problem.
to England. I thought,
So
you know
they will,
what?
they will kill their economy and
Let's see. We're
protect
not
the
there yet.
project.
Sorry, we are a part of the European economy,
That's part of the
but they can trade with whomever.
Well, we can't.
Well, we can on WTO trade. So
And we can, deals will be done very quickly.
doesn't
We've
just
already,
happen.
Switzerland have already
and if you
agreed.
give a free trade deal to one party, you've got to give it to everybody. So your farmers are going to say, thanks for that. Oh, no, sorry, that's a WTO term.
If I have a free trade agreement with Japan, I have to have a free trade agreement with America. What?
Yeah, you've got to match the terms. You have to match
You're
the
talking about
terms.
most favoured
You
nations.
can
though.
stay out of the WTO.
So if
So
I
if you give
if I offer you
Australia,
yeah,
I'm
if
gonna
I say I can import cars from you for 0%, I've got to do it
to
them.
everyone.
That's fine,
Exactly.
we agree with that.
But they're
I happen to be a big supporter of free trade. So, however, but it doesn't. It's
I
not
mean,
going to.
what is likely to happen
I wish
is
people
that,
would stop filming. Eh?
is that we get to the crunch. I mean, it should have happened a long time ago. But Theresa May stands up and says we're leaving on WTO terms, but the door's open, and say to the EU, we would like to start the process on the 30th of March of negotiating a free trade agreement, which is in their interest. The interest of their businesses is in our interest. It keeps everything on exactly the same as it is at the moment.
Can I
And-
just
and
one
we can
problem
do that
with
under
that?
the
One
World Trade
problem.
Organization.
Why would Europe is paranoid that the France and Greece and go down a similar? They're not going to accommodate us. You need to think.
Well,
and Brexit
they
is
will
our
shoot
problem.
themselves in the foot.
Yes, yes, I know, but we've shot both, so we're still worse off than they are. Well, you know what the big part is?
we'll just
On the
be leading
30th of
the pack.
March, we will all see, and I hope it goes well. We're on the same
It was the
side.
same, honestly, in 92 it was the same. If we couldn't leave the euro, we'd be screwed. We fell out, we crashed out without a deal on what was it, 12 was it? I can't remember. And the economy took over. Late 90s we were told the same thing. If we don't join the euro, the city of London
Same people.
will be just a desert.
We must join the euro. The British economy will collapse if we don't join the euro. Nissan threatens to leave. They were going to go.
Well, funny to mention that, they pulled, haven't they? They
No,
pulled.
they reneged on putting the deal
Okay,
out.
They threatened to
They
leave if we don't
suspended
join the
plans to
euro.
produce
But
a
a
new
diesel.
car.
A
But
diesel.
all sorts of other factors. The decline of the Chinese market, the diesel problems, all those sort of things. It's maybe partly due to Brexit, but that's obviously part of the Project Fair version 4 or 5 now. Well, can I? That's a I'm a bit of a layman when it comes to all these technical economic discussions. Why always so fixated on deals? Surely our prosperity depends on how the stuff we make. Is it better than or worse than the rest of the world?
Before
Our
we
products,
can
our
talk about that,
services,
why
our
are we
inventing, our
fixated on
entrepreneurs?
manufacturing? 80% of this economy is financial services or services. Why WTO, your best mate, doesn't even deal with that? So 80% of our economy, we just
Well,
there isn't a single
wait a
market.
minute,
But
wait a minute.
you don't.
But it will come out of it.
Can I just ask you something?
There isn't one.
Of course, there's.
We
It's
can't.
called a passport.
No, you can't.
It's called a passport.
You try and buy a French insurance company, see how you get on with that.
Look, I'm in financial services. You can trade anywhere. It's called a passport.
Well,
You
they-
can go
But how
anywhere.
much? Okay, so if you're in financial services, you say 80% of our economy is financial
No,
services.
it's services.
Services.
Services. Lawyers,
A
accountants.
lot of
What's here?
Hairdressing, bar work.
What percent of the 80% is actually EU and not around the rest of the world?
Or in the UK?
Or in the UK internally?
Well, I don't know. Is that? No, that's not. I just don't
Yeah,
know.
you don't
I mean,
know.
I
But I tell
suspect
you,
quite a lot of
the
well-being.
EU part
Yeah.
isn't as big as you think it is. Our internal market is huge and we sell a lot of services around the world already. And we will probably, if we're able to do our own trade deals, we will say to other countries who
But then it's gonna
make
take
and produce stuff
5
we
years,
don't.
7 years. But
Well,
for
look,
5 years, what
Australia,
happens?
Australia, US
People will
deal,
still
how long did
trade.
it take?
If they put a tariff on, they'll
How
put
long
a
did
tariff on.
the Australian
Yeah,
Union?
what's going to happen to
Yeah.
the man in the street when he has 10%, 30% for farming? Do you think your average
Well,
person can pay that?
part of the 39 billion we could use to help those
They
industries
won't
that
be
are
39.
particularly.
That's it.
No,
They will
we'll-
not. Everyone
10.
has accepted.
We'll-
No,
No,
negative
10 is
10.
the most.
There will be
10 is the most.
a Brexit cost? What's the opposite of a dividend? Cost. There is no 39 billion. Just like the bus. I mean, I cannot tell you, that is just bad faith. What there is.
She's already committed to pay 390 million.
But we borrow. I mean, we can just carry on borrowing. That's a game that we all play.
That's what they do in
Nothing's
Europe.
agreed till everything's agreed.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
an
they've got our own
ODU
currency.
saying.
They can print it
That's
as
an
they like.
ODU saying.
Yeah, we
it'll
could
go
just-
down and value, I
and
know.
the pound would just
But you know what it was
the
100
pound
years
was
ago to the dollar? It
overvalued.
was $4
The pound
for
was
the
overvalued.
I'm South African. I know about weekly
Yeah, you know
currency.
about
Brilliant. It just
depreciation,
goes down and down. And anyway,
But we are a
you guys not going to
huge
run out of
economy
memory at some point. No, you're just going to carry on filming.
But we're a huge economy internally. 78%
don't.
of our GDP is generated internally.
I cannot tell you.
Anyway.
You want to be part of it's the world's expanding. How many
Yes,
times?
and we
So
want to go around
Vauxhall,
trade with the world.
you know, I buy that. I do buy that. But Vauxhall bring an engine in, and then it gets sprayed. It goes back to Europe, and then it
Which
gets.
I disagree with. If you're going to make
Well, that's how
something,
they work.
make it.
No. It doesn't. That's not how the real world works.
In this age of climate change, and we mustn't have too much back
No,
and
don't
forth.
get me going
And Caroline Lucas is the idiot who actually stood up and said, "Isn't it amazing?"
She was here earlier.
Was she?
I quite like Caroline Lucas. I'm a big greenie myself.
Starts in Sunderland.
No, see, it's lefty, see?
Goes back to Germany.
He wants to
then
fight
goes
with me,
back,
yeah.
How can
and then
you
goes to
support those
France.
contradictory ideas
Yeah.
then? That, see, what the EU facilitates in these internal supply lines is this cheap, because the motorways are taxpayer subsidised, so on an EU basis, so it does make economic sense for a company in Coventry, say, to ship these partly cast engine parts to France to be finished off and to Germany for another process. But in a rational world, a green rational world, where we try and minimise the amount of movement, we would try and focus those industries in regional areas, which also would solve one of the problems which led to the Brexit vote, which is the regions being left behind. I mean, not everybody can go into financial services. So all the people who worked in heavy industry, we could, I mean, looking back, we could have restructured industry so that instead of shipping parts to the cheapest, I know that's economically rational, but in the long term, when you factor in the nature of communities and the fact, I mean, there's more to life than economics. There are communities, and that's what happened with the Brexit vote.
Well, I accept that in principle, but I don't. A government can only do so much, and it can't.
I mean, well, yes and no. I mean, Mrs. Thatcher's achieved quite a lot, but you see some of the fallout from what she achieved is this world you described, where we're 80% reliant on financial services.
Nothing wrong with services. What is wrong? No, services. What is wrong with services? They're not a.
Because not everybody can participate in that world. So if you
fine.
think about,
I'm not a maybe.
Well,
No.
Can I bring a
No.
steelworker, an ex-steelworker here? And
But
you
I
tell
don't
him,
put.
it's all right. You know.
No, sorry,
wasting
no,
away
no,
in
don't
Rotherham or something like that.
patronise me. I'm not a steelworker. It's fine
I'll
for
give
me
you
to say
an example
no,
to
but,
counter your argument.
No,
that it's
but
all
all
right.
I'm saying, they're
You
different
seem to be quite
industries.
flippant that it's all right.
No, I'm
carry
flippant
on.
with the prospect of the why are manufacturing jobs valued higher than services
say
jobs?
that.
They're
Did
just
I say
jobs.
that? Did I say that?
No, I said that.
Yeah,
I said
right.
that
So
we
to
are
answer that,
flippant
they're not.
about services
It's
jobs.
not about valuing them. It's about, in a certain society, you have a range of talents, a range of people with
There's
different
nothing wrong with
obvious,
a
isn't it?
steelworker
Right.
making
So
engines.
therefore,
I agree
there's
with
a kind of
that.
responsibility on government and all of us to think in terms of how do you structure a society that gives everybody the possibility of having a worthwhile and valuable job. Now, what seems to have happened, maybe Thatcher didn't intend this, but the outcome of the Big Bang and all that kind of stuff
agree.
was that you
It's
get
all gone.
a huge amount, and regionally you've got the southeast where it's massively imbalanced. You've got certain classes of people, an international, very mobile class, which leaves people, on the periphery, feeling themselves on the periphery. If you forget about the Industrial Revolution, these towns were at the centre of things. Manchester, Leeds, Birmingham, they were the thriving centre of British life. London was a kind of
You know what
trading
I
thing,
think?
but it was,
To me, Brexit was a protest vote.
yes.
And
Yeah.
I don't
No, I
think the
wanted to
answer is
leave.
that.
No.
I think
We're united on that.
we're united on that. You also don't agree with that. I do think you have to support the North. I absolutely agree with that because there'll be a revolution if we continue down
If
this.
you were Prime Minister,
Yeah, I'll do a better job, but not much, but a better.
what would you do?
I think a random person.
I would.
Deadline coming up.
Well, maybe it's not.
I don't know. I really
Number
don't
one,
know.
would you respect the outcome of the referendum? Number one.
I have. and choose my words carefully, especially this guy. I have a massive problem in not respecting it. If you ask the people, it's the one thing I really battle. I don't think a second vote is the answer.
So, okay, on that principle then, where
but I don't think shooting ourselves in the foot out. What do you do? I
should be respected. What's your next step?
I don't know. I feel quite sorry for Theresa May because I really don't know.
Can I ask?
Oh.
I don't know. Well, I prefer her to the opposition. So,
is there anything wrong with EFTA? Is that an option?
sorry, with
EFTA, European Free Trade. I'm only just getting into these things now. So you're promoting.
that's the Norwegian model.
Well. It
the
gets
problem
down to
is
the political process of Europe, as far as I can see. It's essentially what I think we voted for in '75, which is the trade
common
union.
market.
Trading arrangement.
So as far as I can see, the only possible downside is the freedom of movement. But there again, that can be restricted. So people are not entitled to welfare benefits necessarily.
If you read the Lisbon Treaty, because freedom of movement is a massive problem, and to me that cuts to the chase of Brexit. That you can't allow freedom of movement because I think you're undermining But Lisbon does not allow you to just swan across the borders. You have to have the expectation of a job. And I always thought they should have said, we're going to close our borders unless you have a reasonable expectation of a job. And if you... that's what they should have done.
But do you know how many times we have tried to... not
control the border.
No, send them back.
Repatriate.
Well, no, I can't. No, there's another word. I can't think what it is. But we have tried on the basis of either them being rough sleepers, without a job, or not having a job. And the European Court and even our own Supreme Court have ruled it's against their human rights to expel them, if that's the right word. So just on the basis of them either not having a job or the fact that they are homeless. Now, if we can't expel, how do we expel people?
I don't know. I don't know.
So one question, if we're an EFTA, will those human rights considerations apply?
Oh, absolutely. We're still under...
Because there's a European Court of Human Rights that's outside of the EU. So it's worthless then, isn't it? To say
we can control. And the thing is, Norway and Liechtenstein and, who else?
Switzerland, Liechtenstein.
No, the EFTA. Iceland, Norway, Liechtenstein, no, Switzerland,
Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein,
it's four. I can't think of the fourth one. No, Sweden is in the EU. But...
Sorry, we're all going to get... The taxis moving off at 4, so we're all going to get a big beach. So I'm going to take the opportunity to go and have a pee.
Nice talking to you.